The big jump is going to happen when we start really harnessing the power of precision, not fermentation, precision protein engineering, where you can really design and grow the proteins with properties that today are not happening. So a lot of the engineering, a lot of the innovation that is going to come is going to happen there, because you can really produce things that today are unconceivable.
Welcome to this week's episode of Leaders on a Mission, and we've got a great show for you today. Unlike software, biology doesn't scale with code alone, right? It's complex, it's slow, and it's inherently unpredictable. And, for the last 12 years, I've heard about biology redefining, it's poised to redefine trillion-dollar industries, and today we're going to kind of check in with that, and our guest is, for the show today is Massimo Portincaso, who is the CEO and founder of Arsenale Bioyards. And, these guys, they are a really innovative biotech company, and you're in for just a great listen today. Massimo does things a little bit differently. Today we're going to dive in, we're going to understand, I suppose, where we are on the journey, what the future looks like, and how his company is going to kind of drive some of that revolution. So Massimo, thanks so much for coming on today.
My pleasure.
Tell me, maybe we'll start back. We don't need to go right to the beginning, but just tell me, because you've got an interesting background, right? What was the key experience or inflection point for you, right, that led to you kind of co-founding this company?
Yeah, part of it was to basically not make good, but I wrote some of the reports that you were mentioning, talking about the trillions coming out of the industrial bio revolution. And after having invested in a company that I co-founded, in this space, I came to realize that the way the industry was set up will never be able to scale. It's always going to remain a niche industry. And while still being convinced of the potential of the trillions, I realized that unless something radical happens, this is going to stay a niche industry. It's never going to tap into the potential in which it could tap into, and then decided to embark on this journey to really fundamentally and radically rethink the way industrial biotech is done. And I think the emphasis here is on the industrial side, because on the biotech side, we have seen that biomanufacturing using precision fermentation can be incredibly lucrative. And we have seen it. I mean, insulin has been produced this way for 40 years. GLP-1 is produced using precision fermentation. But this is, on the one side is the advantage of it, but it's also the problem embedded in it. Because one thing is to produce things that cost hundreds of thousands or thousands of euro per gram. And one thing is to produce things that should cost a few tens max of dollar per kilogram. And the problem was that we were using the technology that we were using to do one to do the other. And you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand that it's unlikely that this might work economically, that we can use the one cost structure and the one production infrastructure to do both at the same time. But that's what we were trying to do. And that's where it really needed a fundamental rethinking the way you approach it. Okay. So,
look, for you, because you spent about 18, 19 years at Boston Consulting, right, beforehand, right?
Yes.
And so was this, this was a big step, right? I think, first of all, right? I mean, it's, tell us a little bit about that, because all of a sudden you're CEO and founder of a startup.
Yeah, it's been somehow a natural journey. Because, BCG is a fantastic place. I can only speak highly of being at BCG. And you learn really, really a lot. It's just in my last years at BCG, I spent a lot of time on deep tech, And I co-wrote and co-authored some of the reports really defining the space about deep tech, about what I love to call nature co-design, and we can go back to that, why I call it nature co-design, and investing in this space. And then it became somehow natural to be wanting to really put into practice. And I was seeing the potential of what is about to happen and what is happening. And I wanted just to get my hands dirty and make this happen, because seeing the potential impact that this can have, but also the potential economic opportunity that is embedded in there, and really wanted to make it. I initially, actually, to be sincere, I wanted to become an investor. This is where I started, but past experiences in life taught me that it's better that you know what you're doing, and going from be a partner at BCG and become a GP at the fund, I wouldn't have had basically no clue about what I'm doing. So I decided to start from the bottom and spend some time in the space investing in company. I co-founded one, which now we luckily successfully exited already. So it was really a good piece of luck, and invested in other companies. But while doing so, I ultimately realized two things. The first thing was that I much prefer to ask people to give me money to do stuff instead of asking people to give me money to give that money to other people for them to do stuff. I would have been a terrible investor, because I would have been breathing on the neck of the poor investee, telling them what to do. And this is not a good characteristic. So I realized I'm not an asset allocator. I prefer to be a value creator, a direct value creator. So that was the first learning. But the second learning was exactly what I mentioned before, that despite me theorizing the incredible potential of the industry, I came to realize that the industry needed a fundamental debottlenecking, a fundamental rethink of the way this is conceived, which, if you look at it historically, it's not the first time that something like this needs to happen. Because few people know, but before the Industrial Revolution, steel was a very well-known product, as industrial biomanufacturing is today. But the problem is that steel was absolutely not used at all, because it was simply too expensive. And then everything changed when Bessemer came and changed the process, not the product. And by a couple of technical solutions, he managed to bring down the cost of steel from 40 pounds per ton to 6 pounds per ton, and boom, all of a sudden you have the Industrial Revolution, steel is everywhere, you have the railways, you have the Carnegies of this world. Actually, Carnegie is the one who really brought down and industrialized all of this, but Bessemer kicked the transformation. And something very similar needs to happen. We need to really do this jump of one order of magnitude to make the industry really viable and have that kind of transformation that is needed. I deliberately prefer not to use the word revolution. I really much prefer to talk in terms of things that are fundamental and radical rather than talking about revolution. So this is the fundamental and radical change that we need to have in the industry for the industry to become economically viable.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. So when did you set the company up?
In Italy, in close to Venice. And the name is a tribute to the Arsenale in Venice, which few people know, but the Arsenale was, when people talk about the Arsenale, they think about military and guns. But actually, the Arsenale was the shipyard of Venice and was the reason why Venice was so dominant in the seas in the 13th, 14th century. And the reason behind that was that they had the most advanced shipyard in the world, which has been, till the Industrial Revolution, the highest example of industrialization in the history of humanity. And they were able to produce 100 ships in 60 days. It was amazing what they were doing. And this is an homage to that. And the idea is to move from the shipyard to the bioyard. And we're placing this in Italy because one of the things that we want to do is really emphasize the industrial dimension of what we're doing, and there is literally no better place, or very few other better places on earth where to build stuff than northern Italy. We have all our suppliers within a radius of 1 hour drive, and we have proven, because we already built 2 500-liter bioreactors in half the time that it would have taken to order them off the shelf, and we paid much less than it would have cost if we had gone out and bought them on the market.
Yeah.
And all of this with much better performance, because the level of sensing that we are embedding in our bioreactors doesn't exist today.
Got it. So let's dive into that problem then, this bottleneck. To give us a little bit of a view, because I've worked in this space for the last 10 years, and I've just seen a litany of companies generally invest a lot of money, promise loads of change, and all of a sudden things work wonderfully in the lab. They've got the fantastic scientists, and then cost of goods, valley of death, economic unviability, and then you're questioning, hold on, what's happening here? You know, so what are you seeing? Tell me about this debottling.
Yeah, the bottleneck goes back to my point about the biopharma world. And I think if you really want to solve this puzzle, you need to go back to first principle. And the very, very first principle, which has been neglected in all of this, is the fact that biology is context dependent, meaning that your organism never exists by itself, it always exists together with its context. Now, why is this important? This is important because in the pharma world, the value is created in the lab. If you manage to identify a GLP-1, the manufacturing of it becomes a secondary issue. The molecule is really the big advantage. And this is fine that then you go develop the things in the lab and you bring them to industrial scale. But now, if you look outside of pharma and you look from the industrial point of view, your value is not created in the lab. This is a precondition. Your value is created on the industrial scale. And then the manufacturing doesn't become a secondary, it's your primary problem. If you don't solve that, you will not be able to really produce economically and have all the problems that you have described. So the big, innovation that we're doing, that we're bringing to the table, is inverting this process to be able to be compliant with the context dependency of nature. And instead of going from the lab to the industrial scale, what we're doing is we're bringing the industrial scale in the lab and let the biologists develop the product, the organism, and the processes in industrial conditions from the get-go. And this bypasses completely the problem, because you don't have to bring this lab condition to the industrial scale, because you have designed already an industrial condition, and you know that your organism is going to operate, how it is going to operate in industrial conditions. So this is, if you really want to bring it down, this is what we're doing, is the one thing that we're doing. And the second thing that we're doing, which I think is particular, is that we really dramatically expand the option space for people to find that a solution. And this is where the nature co-design comes into play. Because what we've been trying to do in the past decades, there's been this idea of, okay, DNA is the code of nature and we're going to program nature. Just forget about it. The last 10 years are the proof that this is not so easy as we thought. And we cannot take a deterministic, reductionist view of the world applied to nature, program it, because nature has proven us and shown us that 4 million, or I don't know how many millions of years of evolution, has something to say. And we need to learn to go with it. And this is the other big, going back to first principle work that we're trying to do, is what we're doing is, with what we're developing, with the hardware we're developing for the lab, we let the biologists develop at the same time the organism and the process condition. Normally what happens is that people develop the organism, they lock it, and then they look at developing the process condition. And this is a huge problem, not from a scientific point of view, but from a pure numerical point of view. Because if you imagine you take 500 organism design and you pick the best one, and then you have 400 possible process condition and you pick the best one. Normally you think, out of 900, I've taken the two best, I've done a decent job. 2 out of 900 is a good job. The problem is your option space is not 900. Your option space is 200,000. This means that we are looking by doing so in a much, much, much smaller subset, which is usually subpar, that doesn't give you the best possible solution. And in the very few instances in which it gives you a viable solution, then most likely this is not going to scale. If you look at this numerically, you understand, you are reducing, taking 900 out of 200,000. Out of these 900, your chance to get something that works is limited. And then if you get something that works, then the chance that it's going to work at scale is even more limited. So this explains why the industry has not been working the way we thought it should and it would. And what we do is we try to navigate the whole 200,000, but the point is you need to do it in an intelligent way. And this is where nature co-design comes into play. Because if you have to try all the 200,000 possibilities, then this is as problematic as just staying within the 900. So the nature co-design part is navigating this option space of the 200,000 in an intelligent way to find with few shots the places where nature is showing us that this solution is the best one for what we're trying to do. And this is where, it's a completely inversion of the process. It's not, I'm going to come and design the strain and then this is going to do what I want. To say, okay, nature has done this work already. Let's navigate the space and see what nature has already done and go in that direction. That's in an essence what we're doing.
Amazing. Yeah, no, thank you. And when you talk about intelligent design, you're talking more like AI and in order to kind of, because if you're talking about kind of, what was the number? It was like, it was a large number to look between, right? So when you talk about intelligently looking, how do you do that?
Yes and no. I mean, as much as I would love to say it's all about AI, and the truth is that the best way to navigate that option space, partially there is some AI, but actually is Bayesian statistics. It's conditional probabilities and using really, the point is there are ways to extract more value from the data. And this is what we're doing, trying to see and look at all the different kind of dynamics happening there to navigate that space. We do use AI quite a bit, and this is really important, but the AI, we use it more to build a bridge between 50,000 liter and 50 milliliter. So we have a jumping scale of 10 at the 6. So it's 6 order of magnitudes jump. And this is where we use AI, because we use AI basically to predict out of the small bioreactor what is going to happen in the big bioreactor. And this is where AI plays a very important role, because we simulate the physical properties. We don't simulate biology. Biology is too complex to simulate completely. Maybe in 10 years we will be able, but today we can't. But what we do is we look at how things are happening, we replicate the condition in the small scale, and then use AI to predict out of the empirical result what is going to happen at the bigger scale. And this is what allows people to design. So we give people the guarantee that what they're developing is going to work at industrial scale. And at the same time, we let them search in a much bigger option space that might give them a much better solution from the get-go. And this option space is even bigger than it would normally be, because we consider conditions that normally wouldn't be considered in the lab, because we're able to replicate the same pressure and temperature gradients distribution over time that you have at industrial scale.
Yeah, no, thank you for chatting about that. I mean, it's really interesting, completely different approach towards things. And where have you got to on the journey, right? Because you've only been around for a few years, right? So what have you built? Yeah, 1.5 years. So what have been the main kind of milestones that you've built out to date, and where are you on the journey of this?
Before we go there, I think it's important to add another side of the story, which is that we have spoken a lot about the biology, but there is the industrial component that we are tackling at the same time. Because if you want to do what we're trying to do, we really need to bring together biology, engineering, industrial engineering, AI under the same roof and do things. So what I described before, it was about how to deal with the biology, but we still need to deal with the industrial side of things. And on the industrial side of things, what is really important that we do is that we don't scale up, we do scale out. So if you want more capacity, we're not going to give you a bigger vessel to produce, because every time you go up, your complexity increases exponentially with a lot of problem. And a lot of what the industry has been trying to do is, has been inheriting the thinking from the petrochemical world of the bigger the better, thinking in terms of refineries and, super big plant, and then let's go for economies of scale. But with biology, you are not going to win with economies of scale. Biology doesn't scale linearly. The way you're going to win with biology is through economies of learning, is applying the learning. And it's not new. It's the same way we have done it with photovoltaic. We brought down the cost of photovoltaic, not by doing bigger and bigger solar panel. We brought it down by doing the same panel again and again and again. And this brought down right low 24%. And this is the same that we want to apply here. It's just really, you want more capacity. We're containerizing the capacity. And you get more bioreactor to produce what you want to produce. And this is really important because this way we can bring down the cost because we're going to produce them in series. And again, we're inverting the paradigm. Instead of, as it is the case mostly today, where you literally build the plant around the molecule and the organism, we are designing the organism for our plant. So we can really standardize the plant and turn this into an asset class. So this is the next important thing that you need to consider. So we need to look at the biology, but also the industrial side of things, because only if you go end to end, you will be able to bring down the cost and the time by one order of magnitude.
So just so I understand, so you're talking about, like, for instance, at the beginning, you mentioned about you've got these 50,000 bioreactors, for instance, yeah? So you're talking about kind of, making it a little bit modular and keeping things to the same size, so you'll use more of those 50,000s, right? As opposed to scale it to 200,000, 300,000, it's just more consistent, right?
Yes.
But what about when you make that big jump, and you go to that really kind of industrial scale size? How does that work then? And how do you deal with the issues and the challenges that might come up from that?
What do you mean?
Just like if you've got everything working on 50,000 litre kind of vessel, as it were, bioreactor, because I've always heard about that valley of death and that scale up, and you lose things, different conditions and the challenges of really scaling something from there. So,
we have bypassed this completely because we have designed in the lab in the same condition at which the organism is going to operate in the 50,000 liter. So that value of that is taken out of the equation because you are designing directly at scale.
Got it.
In the same pressure and temperature. We represent the gradients of pressure, temperature, pH over time, see how the organism reacts, and design directly in those conditions. So that value of that is gone for us. And to avoid that, we need to go to another value of that because we designed for 100,000. We multiply these and we add those bioreactor at that capacity so that we can really design for that standard size. And we bypass the value of that.
Yeah, so it's like a scale down almost, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I have this discussion very often and people say scale. The point is we are not scaling down something because when you scale down, it's all a matter of design space. When you scale down, you have already reduced your option space. So what we do is we design a scale. This widen your option space so you can find better solution. So there is a difference, but the principle is not so far from it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, I've done lots of hiring for companies in this particular space, and I'm thinking back, those 10 years, everything was about the strain engineers, everything was about the lab. And then, every now and again, a process development role or someone that could bring it to market, or someone that can manage the relationships with the vendors. I mean, you can see where the attention, where the focus, and where the money has been spent, basically. over the last 10 or 15 years, you know. And tell me, well, where have you got to then? I mean, this is a really exciting kind of how you're kind of outlining this, as it were. How are you going around building the company?
So where we are now is that in less than 1 year and a half, we start in January 2024. We have a full functioning pilot facility in Pordenone, close to Venice, where we have 2 500-liter bioreactor fermenting. We're starting with data generation by the end of the month, and really run them continuously to produce the data needed. We have the second iteration of our 50 milliliter microbioreactor. So we have 2 batteries of 8 operating in place. And we're already planning for the next iteration of the facility, which is going to be 2 5,000 liter that we're going to put in the same facility and continue to develop the microbioreactor, what we call the Piccolo. And the idea is to open the first facility, let's say early 2029. It will be the first facility really producing stuff. But before we go there, we need to prove the algorithm. We need to prove that design at scale works the way we want, and it's supposed to work. But we're confident that we can get there soon.
Fabulous, yeah. And in terms of the business model, right? How does it work? Who are your customers, and how will they all kind of work with you, as it were?
The idea is, when I explain what we do, because we are making the capacity, we're selling the capacity ultimately. So a lot of people say, so you are a CDMO. And my answer is yes, we are a CDMO the same way an electric vehicle is a car, the same way an internal combustion engine is a car. Both get you from A to B, but the underlying principles are completely different.
Yeah.
And we're different from a CDMO in 2 ways. The first thing is that what we're doing is not building a contract manufacturing organization. We don't work on your behalf. We are providing you an enabling platform. And this is a huge difference. So we let you use the platform, work with the platform, decide which processes to use in collaboration with us, for sure. But it's an enabling platform. It's not a service organization, a contract organization doing things on your behalf.
Yeah.
So all the learnings that are coming out of it, remember when I said it's all about economies of learning, and well, we need to walk the talk, and that learning needs to go back also to our clients. And the data are completely theirs from that point of view. The second big difference there is that, and this is something that's going to go beyond biomanufacturing, is going to be something that we're going to see more and more in the world of manufacturing. The big difference is that what we're building is software or data first. So what you have been seeing in the past decades is that people add hardware, or people design the hardware, and then once they have the hardware, they design a software layer on top of it to operate it. Well, if you do that, you have a big problem, that your software capabilities are limited by the hardware. And we are, again, going back to first principle, we are inverting this, and we start from the software, we start from the data that are needing, and we're building the hardware to be able to produce the data and do the actuation that is needed for the software, in this case the AI, to really do what it's supposed to do. Otherwise, you will never be able to get there. And this is why the integration is so important for us, because you cannot just put a simple software layer on top of it. If you don't have the data, what are you going to do with the software? Not much. And this is why this is the big difference. And, retrofit equipment and so on is very difficult. And we're really building the first infrastructure, which is designed to generate data. If you ask me, ultimately what we're doing, we're building a data generating machine. Nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah, no, I love it. It sounds great. And how have you found going out, and because you closed a seed round not so long ago, right? So how, what was that experience like for you going out there and talking to investors and really selling this kind of concept and idea?
It's funny because first I'm really lucky to have found investors that are supporting us, believing what we're doing, and hopefully we will continue to fundraise the way we've been doing so, and there are good signs that this is going to be possible. But at the same time, it was, I had investment, and what you're doing is a lot, is too much, is very ambitious. And I thought, wow, that's what I thought investors are there for, to really support you. Say, no, this is too big, you cannot do it. Can you do just a piece of that, or things like this? Or people saying, oh, this is going to require a lot of capital. And I say, yeah. I mean, we want to put steel in the ground, we want to put millions of liters of capacity on the ground, we're going to need it. But there are a few investors that gets it, many don't. I now start laughing when I speak to climate tech investors saying we don't do hardware. I say, okay, good luck with that. But my belief is that there are a few enlightened VCs out there, and I count our investor among those for sure. But I really deeply believe that the whole capital stack needs to be rethought fundamentally. And I came to the conclusion that, the rules that they are today are not conducive to what we want to do, and we need to redefine the rules. I think the next round, we're going to close it traditionally. But I think for what needs to come, we really need to rethinking. There is a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of financial engineering and rethinking these, because ultimately we have done the math, and if things go the way we think they could and should do, we should be able, with a couple of $100 million, to put down more than 2 billion of steel. But you really need to rethink the capital stack. You really need to go back to project financing. You need to equip yourself from that from the get-go. One thing we never discussed is that I think that in this transition, when it comes to manufacturing, there is an absolute need to rethink completely the old utilities side of things. We are still doing utilities the way we were doing them in the 50s, in the 60s. The old renewable part, we are not yet treating energy as a technology. We are still treating energy as a commodity, and we need to stop that. It's part of, the 4 pillars that we have. One is bringing the industrial condition in the lab. The second is expanding the upstream space. The third one is scale out and not scale up. But the 4th pillar that we have is rethinking the whole utilities part and redo the utilities, thinking of energy as a technology, as not as a commodity. And this is going to have a huge set of implications on the way you do it, because if you look, when you do biomanufacturing, you have 3 sources of feedstock, so to say. There's human feedstock, so labor. Second one is the feedstock, so the sugar. But the third one is as important as the sugar in terms of cost, is energy. So if you can shave and go from 30% to 25% of your cost, it's 5% margin that you're making. And this is so important, but you really need to fundamentally rethink, emancipate yourself. If you extrapolate, think about your facilities as off-grid and integrate them with renewable. It's really a fundamental rethink. As you see, we always love to do things that are fundamental and radical and really go back to first principle. And how would you do it? If you would design it today, how would you do it? How can you stop thinking of energy? You don't need to use a gas boiler all over the place. You can use heat pumps today. You can use renewables. You can use thermal batteries. There are many things how you can really rethink all your utilities.
No, I love it. Thank you. Just before I move on to a couple of other points, maybe just touch upon, when we think about sectors and this, bio-industrial kind of change we're talking about here, right? What sectors do you think will what do you see as the future for this? What sectors will be most either disrupted, or what kind of products will come to market? How would you see things evolving, say in 10 years' time or 20 years' time?
So this is something we spend a lot of time thinking about. I think that the sector that is going to impact it from this the most is cosmetic. I deeply believe in that. And I think I value molecular compounds in the food space as well. I think one of the big fallacies, in my view, that we had in the past years has been this idea of going immediately for commodities and going after casein, which is very difficult, very low price, creating a sort of issues. While I think that in the longer term, we need to move away of thinking in terms of commodities altogether. Because I think something that gets discussed too little, in my view, is that there is a lot of focus on drop-in, on replacement. And I think if you do this, you're limiting yourself in what is really the potential of what is going on here, which is understandable because it's been so difficult to scale things industrially that people are not thinking, let's first get there and then we're going to deal with it. But I really think that the big jump is going to happen when we start really harnessing the power of precision, not fermentation, precision protein engineering, where you can really design and grow the proteins with properties that today are not happening. So a lot of the engineering, a lot of the innovation that is going to come is going to happen there, because you can really produce things that today are unconceivable. But you need the infrastructure to be able to produce them reliably, which is what we're building. But once you have these, you're going to see a lot of, mining, for instance. You're going to do things with enzymes that today are unthinkable in the old chemistry. There are going to be things that today, because it's not going to be a replacement discussion. Okay, you have biosurfactants and going to replace biosurfactants coming from petrochemical with biosurfactants, but we can redesign and have biosurfactants with certain properties for specific use cases. And this is another reason why I think that going for scale out and not scale up is important, because I think that we're going to have a bifurcation of the market, and there are going to be molecules where we're going to have hypercommoditization and molecules that are going to be decommoditized because you can apply. Collagen is a good example. And we're start seeing some of it, where people designing collagen with specific property for specific usage, while today it's a commodity, is produced harnessing carcasses of animals, boiling them, and harvesting the protein. So that's the collagen you get. In the future, it's going to be collagen for your skin in this age to do that, and so on and so forth. And this is where we're going to go more and more. And this is going to apply to sectors that today we cannot, lubricants. There are many things that today we cannot even conceive. But I think this is really where the true potential of what we're doing lies.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Really exciting. And the other thing I wanted to touch upon, what I found fascinating, was you build your company and, your type of, we spoke about, you were kind of really adamantly rejecting traditional org charts, as it were, and really letting structures evolve. And I loved some of the kind of thinking that you had around this. So tell me a little bit around what this leadership looks like, as it were.
So, yeah, that's right. You will never see an org chart of Arsenale. Now we are 24, but I refuse. I have investors asking for the org chart. I'm not giving it to them. And the reason for that is that the org chart is basically a relic of the past. We're drafting org charts the same way we were drafting org charts in the 1920s. There's been zero innovation on the front, and this comes from a different way of looking at companies that were built in a completely different environment. And the way I see Arsenale, the way we're trying to build Arsenale, is much more akin to the way NVIDIA is building itself as a network of projects. I think this is the future, and this is necessary. You really need to stop thinking in terms of function and what operates and a mechanism, but really thinking in terms of outcomes and create the environment, an organism, a system that can deliver the outcomes, bringing together the capabilities that are needed to deliver that outcome. So the focus is more on building the network and the interaction between the different capabilities that you have within the organization than thinking in terms of structure and silos, because then I'm seeing it already now with 24 people. We have naturally emerging silos because people are working together, and having the communication flow, thinking in terms of project that goes across the different capabilities is fundamental and needs to be embedded in the DNA of the company from the get-go. This, conversely, requires a completely different style of leadership. It's not the top-down, I'm telling you what you have to do and you deliver, but it's just really relying on the nodes in the system to bring up what is needed to deliver the outcome in place. So you really swap And your job as a leader in this context is to build a scaffold around which the organization can grow and nudge that growth in the right direction and look at what is happening within the system to be able to deliver the outcome that are needed. But you don't have a direct management. You tell people it's not causal thinking, so cause and effect, but it's more where are the leverage point in the system, where are the boundaries that I can set for the system to evolve and deliver the outcomes that I'm looking forward. It's a very completely different mindset. You need to let it go. You need to abandon the illusion of control that an org chart gives you, because you tell your N-1 to do this and then you think this is going to happen, rather than you really let the things emerge bottom up. But you put in place the scaffold to make sure that that energy is directed toward the outcome that you are pursuing in that moment.
Love it. Who inspired you along this? Where did you get this from?
It comes from my time at BCG, where I was realizing that the way we were operating were somehow wrong, and I started reading. And then the organization that I was leading there, we started the process of doing this transition and then kept reading about it and then looking at what the successful companies are doing. If you look, Netflix is a good example. Before that, NVIDIA today is, for me, the best example of that. If you look at what the CEO there is doing, he has, I think people say between 50 and 60 direct reports, no one-to-one with people. It's all a network of projects. And this is what has enabled NVIDIA to deliver. They're delivering. And the point there is a root cause behind of this, is that one, the complexity of the environment in which companies operate today is increasing dramatically. And I keep telling the team, complexity and the investor, complexity is a feature, not a bug. Complexity is something to harness to deliver the outcomes. It's not something to reduce. You don't fight complexity by simplicity. You harness complexity, and through abstraction, you nudge the organization into the outcome that you want to bring to. So it's a very completely different way of managing this. And I've been reading and I got passionate about it. And this was ultimately one of the reasons why I wanted to start Arsenale. On the one side, I saw the potential of biomanufacturing, but on the other side, I wanted to build a company for the 21st century that is fit for purpose, that can deal with the level of innovation, because the pace of innovation is dramatically increasing. You're seeing what is happening on the AI world, and organizations are not capable to cope with it because they're not designed to be able to do that. And I wanted to design an organization where really you can get people to perform at 120% of what they're capable of, not 30, 40%, which is the norm in most organizations.
Yeah, amazing. We could talk all day to you, because you've got a very unique way of looking at the world, and I've really enjoyed the conversation. And this is a really kind of exciting challenge that you're taking on, and you look at like a liberated free man coming to work every day with real kind of excitement. So listen, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your vision, outlining the problems and the issues, and just explaining where you think we go and how we get there. And then I love the discussion on some of the kind of org chart. I'll chat to you further about this offline as well, and very exciting. So thanks so much for coming on today. Really enjoyed the chat.
It's been a pleasure. And finally, I could also speak about the people side of things, which I think is the most important, the most difficult in setting up a company. Forget about technology, forget about your vision. If you don't get the people to work properly, you're missing an opportunity, and you're not going to get where you want to get. That's the A and O of everything. So glad that I had the chance to speak about it.
Yeah, no, amazing. And thanks to thanks to all the listeners tuning in. It's been a really interesting and radical discussion. So hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next show.